So, hello. So great that you're with us. I love that even when the lights come on and everybody starts quieting down, there's some still is like, no, I've got to get a few more words in. I've got just a little bit more talking going on today. So looking at this volleyball, you probably have lots of different thoughts coming on. Some of the things that I've thought of is the Olympics that were recent and how I loved watching volleyball there. The sand volleyball and the six-person men and women. It was just so fun to think about being able to move that well. Never happened. Mark and Lisa actually probably think of their son Taylor, who's a professional volleyball player. He's over in Italy right now playing volleyball, or starting soon, and they're going to go visit him soon. And so I'm sure that comes to their mind. I think too of, just Sunday afternoon. Sometimes you have a family outing or a gathering of friends. One of our sons played volleyball his junior and senior year in high school, and it was kind of a new thing for us. We didn't really know the rules. And so Steve didn't realize that you're not supposed to yell at the refs, because that's just a part of what he loves to do. You know, football, everybody's loud, but in volleyball, you're really not supposed to do that. So he was always getting this, shh, because that was just the fun. Whatever your thoughts are when you come and you see this, if I make just a small adjustment, you kind of think of something else, don't you? What do you think of? Wilson, Castaway, that's right. And so some of you that are so young that you don't know this movie, it was Tom Hanks' Castaway, where he was actually on a deserted island for 4 years. And in the midst of that, he had to learn how to adjust and do everything. But there was a time in there where he was not going to move forward until he found a friend. And Wilson became his confidant, the person, so to speak, that encouraged him to go on, that he could talk to, that he could tell all of his deep thoughts to, and his frustrations, and then his joys too. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the power of the other, how we can do things with other people in our lives that we couldn't do alone, just as Tom Hanks couldn't do it without Wilson. And so Henry Cloud, in his book, The Power of the Other, says this. He says that as long as you are alive, your heart and mind and soul will be searching for connection, an other, several others, a community that will bring life, all the ingredients of life that you need to get past the limit of your present existence and performance. Henry Cloud is a psychologist and a leadership expert, and he says, without others in your life, you can't be all that you need to be. You can't move past some of those barriers that are in your life right now. He tells the story of a Navy SEAL. And the Navy SEAL shared about his journey of becoming a SEAL. And he said there's all kinds of training, and these guys are the baddest people on the planet. They have all this training, and then it culminates in a week of, they call Hell Week, where they have to do all of these things before they're actually officially a Navy SEAL. And he told of his journey with that, where the last thing that they do is this swim in the ocean where it's freezing, and they go a really, really long way. And he gets to a point where he can see the shore. It's there. His goal is right in front of him, and what he's been working on for months and training for, and there it is, but he is done. He doesn't have any more energy. There's nothing left in his tank. He said, I didn't think I could do one more stroke. And I was ready to tap out and end this process and just say, I can't do it. Until he looked to the shore and he saw one of his buddies up there that had already finished. He'd done it. He'd accomplished his goal, but he hadn't left to celebrate. He was there for his friend, and he just gave him a big fist pump. And this man says, that, I don't know how, but that energized me where I could finish. And I am now who I am today because of my buddy not leaving me out there on my own. That's the power of the other. That's the strength that we need from other people in our lives. So it's really great to hear those stories, but listen to some of the other things. This is the science of the other. They've actually done lots of studies to say, we don't know how this works, but it's actually really true. So here's a study from Alameda County. Pretty close. We know Alameda County. 9-year study, over 7,000 people. So this isn't just a short study with a few people. 9 years, over 7,000 people involved in this study. And here's some of the things that they found out. That the most isolated people, the ones with no healthy community, they're 3 times more likely to die earlier than others with a healthy community. Here's another point that you'll probably like even better than that one. Those with bad health habits, smoking, poor diet, no exercise, drank alcohol, poor health habits, but healthy connections. Okay, you got that? Does that sound like anybody in this room? They had, with these strong connections, they lived significantly longer than those that had healthy habits, but no relationships, no connections. So if you want a good excuse not to go to the gym, just make sure you have lots of good friends, okay? Another study, American Medical Association, they intentionally infected people with the virus that causes the common cold. And this is what they found. Those with stronger emotional connections were 4 times better at fighting off the sickness. 4 times better. And they actually, even stronger, oftentimes they didn't get sick when they had those healthy combinations. They don't know why this works. It just happens. Here's an even better thing from this study. Those people that had strong connections produced significantly less mucus. Now, that's a good reason to have healthy connections, isn't it? You just have less snot. I mean, I don't know why, but it just happens. And then Daniel Siegel, UCLA neurobiologist, so he studies the brain. He's come up with this triangle of well-being. And this is what he says. You need 3 things to be the best that you can be. And here are the 3 things. You need a good physical makeup, so your body, your brain, all of that. You need a healthy mind, and that it stays engaged. And the third one, what do you think it is? Good relationships, good connections. He says, I've studied the brain, and when I study the brain, those people with good connections, it shows up that they are the healthiest people. And so I just love that science is proving what Jesus has told us all along, right? He's told us this all along, and you've heard it before, but we're going to spend some more time on it this morning. He tells us in John 13, he says, a new command I give you, love one another. So would you pray with me? And then let's look at this even further. Jesus, thank you that you know the power of the other so much better than we do, and that you command us to be a part of this, but you also show us what it looks like. And so as we continue to look at this morning, I just pray that we would open our hearts to the things that you have for us. Help us not to tune out because we feel like, yep, I've heard this before. We have, and we still need it, and we need it again and again. So I pray that you would help us to hear the things that you want us to hear this morning. I pray in your precious and holy name, Jesus. Amen. So, like I said, this probably doesn't sound really very new, and it's not. Steve started back yet last week as a reminder of what we're about around here at Westgate. Mark mentioned it a few minutes ago too, but we want to come back to that over and over again so we will be reminded of the things that are most important to us. And so we say, why are we here? Why are we here as a church? But why am I here as an individual? Why has not God just poofed me up to be with him when I came to trust in Christ as my Savior? Well, Jesus tells us why we are here. And we are here to make disciples. Matthew 28, he says, go and make disciples. He's telling those that are surrounding him, and he's going to be leaving. And he says, your job, your purpose, what you are to be about is to make disciples. And so we hold that very dearly here. And not only do we say, okay, make disciples, we want to define what is a disciple. A disciple's a kind of a churchy word sometimes, but a disciple is just someone who follows after the teachings of someone else or someone who's trained by someone. So you're probably a disciple of many people, but we're really intentional to say, okay, we are disciples of whom? Well, of course, it's of Jesus Christ. And so we've taken a verse from the book of Luke, chapter 6, verse 40. That's kind of our mantra from that. And Luke 6:40 says, a student is not above his teacher, but when a student is fully trained, he will become like his teacher. And so that kind of in a nutshell for us is what we want to be about. We want to be making disciples, but first we have to be a disciple. We have to be a disciple, and that means we're following after Jesus, our teacher, and looking like him and doing the things that he says for us to do and calls us to do so that we can then help pass that on to others. And we've talked about this before, but he calls us mainly, everything else kind of fits into this, to 3 loves. Love God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, with all of you and everything that's about. Part of being here this morning is in collectively together looking at what it looks like to love God. And we do that individually too. And then he said, out of your love for God, love your neighbors. Love them compassionately. Think about the people around you, what their needs are, and engage with them in relationship. And as a community, we have a really great opportunity right now to love our neighbors because we're starting another campus in Sunnyvale. That's not so you have a better parking spot here on this campus or a seat in this room, although hopefully that will happen too when some of you leave and go up there. But it's mainly so that the people that live in Sunnyvale and maybe looking for a church community are not even sure what they're looking for yet, that a Westgate church there in that area will be a spark for them to say, I want to find out what this God thing is all about. That's what another campus is really about. It's about loving our neighbors in the Sunnyvale area. And you'll hear just a little bit more about that in a little bit too. But that's loving our neighbors. But we want to focus today on loving one another. And we want to look at that more. So I'm going to go back to John chapter 13 and say, what does Jesus say for us to do? So those of you who aren't familiar with the Bible, John was actually one of what we call the 12 apostles or the 12 disciples. He followed around with Jesus for 3 years. He was probably a fairly young man, but he was traveling with Jesus. And then he wrote down some of the things that Jesus said. And in this time, in John chapter 13, what's happening is Jesus is going to go to the cross in just a few hours to pay for our sins, to die for the sins that we have all committed. And right at that time, he gathers those that are closest to him. There's only 11 at this time because Judas has already left to go and betray him. But he gathers those 11 and he says to them, hey guys, I want to tell you something that's really important. And he calls them a word like a little children, or actually it's a family word. He doesn't use it in any other place. But he says, we are family. And as family, I want to leave you with something you can hang on to and hold on to and practice and do. And what he says is, a new command I give you. Now, it's not actually new. You can find this kind of command in the Old Testament, but he's going to give them a shift, like a volleyball to a Wilson. He's going to give them something new in it, a fresh look at it. He says, a new command I give you, love one another. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. He says the kind of love that you need to have for each other is the same kind of love that I have given to you. They would have had pictures in their mind of what that looked like, that kind of love. See, they had been, just like John, these 11 had been traveling with him for almost 3 years. They had been doing life together. He knew their families. He knew the good things about them and the bad things about them. I mean, just think of some of the things that Peter did. I mean, he knew them really well, but he said, I love you in a way that you understand and know. What are some of the other things he did? He supported them. He prayed for them. He challenged them to be better than they thought that they could be. He said, you can do what I think you can do. I've called you, and I know people are going to call you unschooled fishermen, but I know who you really are. I know you can go about the world making disciples. He forgave them when they were prideful, when they were jealous, when they wanted a different plan, and he also served them. Just a little bit earlier in this chapter is when he saw their need of dirty feet, and he, the teacher, the leader, the Christ, got down on his knees and he washed their feet. See, he gave them a picture of what it looked like to love them, and then he did the ultimate thing for them and died for them just a few hours later. See, Jesus said, it's not just any kind of love. It's the kind of love that others, when they see it, will know that you follow after me, will know that you are my disciple. That's the kind of love I want you to show to each other. Even when you frustrate each other and get angry, continue to work towards the kind of love that I have for you. That's the picture, the example that Christ gave not only for them, but he gave to each one of us too. Those are the same kinds of things that Christ does for us in the same kind of way that Christ loves us. Wow, it's so much more than I can do. And when I even think about that, I know I'm going to fail at it, but I don't have to do it alone. But I do have to think about it. I have to think about what does that look like in my life, and what kind of relationships do I have in my life. And if we do a little bit of evaluation, then sometimes we know there's a lot of work that needs to be done in this area. So I'm going to look at what Henry Cloud calls in his book, the 4 corners of connection. And when I do that, I would ask you to just kind of process maybe where you are, and then where you want to be, and what step you might want to take. We're never going to be perfect at this, but we need to make some movement, and we need to identify what our tendencies are. So his first corner is the disconnected. So this is a person that maybe life has taught you it's just better to do it on your own. Maybe you're in this corner because you've been hurt when you've tried to reach out to others. I get that. But that's not a reason to stay in this corner. It's the person who is maybe good at giving to others, but they can't receive from others very well. Maybe you seem loving, but it's always one way. Or maybe it's the other. You always take, but you never give to anybody else. And you stay kind of in this box, this corner of no connection, disconnected. You don't really make connections, even though you might be surrounded with a whole lot of people. So just think about it. Maybe it's not in every relationship, but maybe that's where you stay most of the time. The next corner is the bad connection. Okay, we all know probably in our heads that we should have connection with other people, and we don't want to stay in the disconnected corner. So we move, but our movement is towards this bad connection. It's kind of the idea that, anything's better than nothing, but maybe that's true and maybe it's not true. It seems to be that this person in this corner is pulled towards the person that makes you feel bad. Doesn't mean they're a bad person, they're just bad for you because of maybe their high expectations or their critical spirit, or they withhold praise from you. And when you are around them or in this corner all the time, it feels like you're always playing defense. You're always wondering about what am I going to say or what am I going to do that's going to set them off or make me feel bad. Sometimes, actually, for me, myself, I'm usually in this corner with my own critical spirit about me. And I get stuck in there sometimes. And so I don't allow others to come in because I'm so critical of myself. So maybe you're in that corner. I think you know and you realize you don't want to get stuck there. You want to continue to move. And so the next corner is the pseudo-good connection. So this is the corner where you don't want to have no connection, you know that. And you don't want to have a bad connection, so you just find something that makes you feel good. And you go into that and you go towards that. Maybe it's people are with you doing it. It's just an activity, though. It's just a thing. Maybe it is an addiction that you have, that you go towards that makes you feel better, that's not really a connection. For me, this would be TV. When I'm tired and I want to withdraw, I can be around people. When I'm watching TV, I can get engaged in some kind of good story, but there's no real connection. It's just a pseudo connection. Maybe it is a hobby or an activity that you do that's fun, and you do it with other people. You just don't talk about anything. Now, I have to admit, we have a teaching team meeting, and we meet every week, and we talk about the messages. And when we were talking about this one, knowing that I am a female, and it's kind of this idea that females are better at relationships. I don't think that's necessarily true, but the guys, and there's a majority of men in the room, they were like, okay, Dana, guys don't do this very well. If you get up and say, you have to go, you share all of your feelings and look across the table of each other and really talk deep, they're going to freak out and tune you out. So guys, right now, don't tune me out. But you cannot use that you are a man and you don't do this well as a very good excuse. That's just not a good excuse. So a lot of us get stuck in this corner where we're doing things or being involved in things, but we just allow it to be at the surface level. We don't let it go any deeper. And we need to think about letting it go deeper. We need to think about moving to the fourth corner, which is true connection. Not with everybody, of course not, but with some. And what is true connection? True connection is where you can be your real self. True connection is where the good and the bad come out. And you don't hold all of the things that you're really thinking and feeling in because you're afraid of what someone else is going to think about you. True connection is where you can be authentic. True connection is where there's give and take on both sides, and that people are present in it. True connection is taking it to that level where you can say, how are you doing? And you don't just answer, yeah, I'm doing fine, great. Doesn't everything seem good? But you go to the sense where you can say, you know what? I'm really struggling, and here's what I'm struggling with. Would you help me? Would you be in this with me? But you have to be able to open up and share those things and talk about those things to allow that true connection to happen. All of us are probably in some sense in every one of the corners, but sometimes we get stuck in one more than moving through to finding those true connections. And Christ says, no, the other three are not good enough. He says, I need you to love each other in a way that there is real knowing, and love each other in a way that people can see something different in that kind of a relationship. It's having those Wilsons, but they have a real personality to them. I have some true connections. And I have to admit, I'm an introvert. I don't really even like lots of people all at once. When we have our 2 minutes of connection time here during the service, is the part of the service I hate the most. Because I'm like, oh, what am I going to talk about? What am I going to do? 2 minutes? Really? Can't they just do one? So I get this, but I have some true connections. And I can think in my life of everywhere we've lived in a period of time, and I can name at least one person other than Steve. He's always there, of course. But there's Jonelle, there's Jessica, there's Lucy, there's Kelly. They're not all still a part of my life. But a couple of them are in such a way that I know they are praying for me right this minute. And I am not up here alone. They are up here with me. That's the power of the other that we all need so that we're not doing it alone. But if Christ tells us, and even movies tell us, and books and research tell us that we're better together, why is it so hard for us to be in those kinds of relationships? Why is it so hard for us to be in community? We've talked about some of it already. Sometimes it's just fear. It's fear of what someone will do when they have that kind of power over you, where they know their true self, and you've had some bad history with things like that. And so you're just kind of like, I'm done with it. I'll just stay in the disconnected box because it's just easier. Sometimes it's fear of not even really knowing how to start moving from a pseudo good connection to a deeper connection. What kinds of things do you say? I get that. I understand it. A lot of times the excuse we use is just time. I mean, we live in a really busy place, and I know a lot of you have to work a lot, but you can't, again, use that to determine what's going to be the outcome of your life. You are not all that you can be without having these kinds of connections. And family is great, but we have pseudo good connections with family too. We don't give the time that we need for those relationships to develop and be deeper. It doesn't always feel good to start this, but the end result is something that science can't explain. It's those connections where we live longer. It's those connections where we have less snot. I don't know. It's just important. And Jesus calls us to it. So we have to be intentional. We have to be willing to say, what does it need to look like in my life, and how can I take a step? We need to pray to say, Jesus, help me to want to do this. And sometimes you have to do things like what I did with my friend Kelly, probably, 13, 14 years ago now. I needed a friend that was outside of the family of Westgate when we moved to San Jose. I needed someone where my husband was not their pastor. And so this gal kept coming to my mind. I had just met her a couple of times. But I called her and I said, would you go for a walk with me? And then I felt like I was a junior high girl, but I said, will you be my friend? Thankfully, she said yes. Fear, are you kidding me? There was a lot of fear there, but I knew I needed it. And so I was intentional about it. So now we get to the part where you've all been thinking, okay, when's she going to get to that section where she talks about life groups? This is it. Now you know, we're here. The family of Westgate. We're a family. But I bet you don't know the names of anybody over in this section because you always sit over here. And you in the middle, you think you've got it. I'm in the middle. But your seat's not always available. So you have to sit around somebody else. In 2 minutes, you really can't get to know each other very well. But the family of Westgate is important for us to say, let's make an effort and be intentional to go deeper with each other. And so life groups are the way that we can be intentional about it and provide an opportunity to do that. Now, I'm not going to say that you're going to find your best friend there. Cannot promise that. I do know it has happened. But I think what you will find in most of our life groups, it's an environment where you can be your real self. It's an environment where you can practice what it looks like to love one another a little bit more. It's an environment where you can start this process. Doesn't always work. It's not perfect, but it's an intentional thinking about it. So for those of you who are not involved in that yet, we would suggest that you start with Discover 640 Life. And here's the reason why. Discover 640 Life is about the core of who we are. It's about those three loves. And we look at that together, but it's also in an environment where it is 9 weeks. You start and you stop. You can try it. You can see what some of this stuff looks like without having a really long-term commitment. You're in table groups where it's in a bigger setting, but you're in table groups with smaller amount of people, and we're trying something new where we're trying to partner you up with people that you live around or have a certain kind of hobby with. And so instead of me telling you all what it looks like, I want someone else to tell you. But before we do that, I want you to pull out your cell phone. I know Mark told you earlier to put them up, but now you have permission. Pull it out. Just don't do anything else with it. Don't start checking anything. Don't see how many messages you've had in the last hour. Just pull it out and hold on to it. Let's listen to this couple's experience, and then I'll tell you what to do with your cell phone.
I'm Josh Brummels. I moved here in October of 2013.
And I'm Angelica Brummels, and I'm from Mexico City, and I moved from my country to USA to marry him. We have been wanted to take a class to grow as a person, in the spiritual side.
It's easy to sit in the audience and either be a critic or otherwise not engage, but if you really want to, make the church what you want it to be, then you need to get involved. And we saw this as the first step towards getting involved.
We are alone here. Our families are in Nebraska and in Mexico, and we are here with our 2 kids. Everybody's super busy, so you really feel alone. And after we were in 640, it was very nice that we were walking at church, and we feel like this is our home. And the people would say, "Hey, Angelica, how are you? How is your kids?" It was super cool.
And it's great to show up and smile and be happy to see somebody, and it's great to be recognized by somebody. I think what I really got out of the class as far as my spiritual development is it was really good to revisit the foundations of what I believe as a Christian, and the class really highlights the key concepts of loving God, loving your neighbors, and loving others in the context of loving God with all your heart, all your mind, and all your strength. And you spend about a day on each one of those topics. I think it's important that everybody have a chance to revisit the foundation of their faith every once in a while, and the class is a great opportunity to do that.
We want to be part of the body of the church. We don't want to be a number, or we don't want just to, hey, I'm here, I'm leaving, bye-bye, I don't care. We want that they become our family. Our friends is our family, and what better than have friends that honor God in the same way.
The Bay Area life is busy, and there's always reasons why we can't do stuff, but this is not a very difficult thing to do, and it's worth it. You can do it, and you'll be glad you did.
How cute are they? Who wouldn't want to be in a group with them, right? Your cell phones now. If you have not been through Discover 640 Life, or if you're not in a life group now, all you need to do, we want to make it as easy as possible, all you need to do right now is send us an email if you can that says dsl@westgatechurch.org. We will send you an automatic reply where it then shows you how you can sign up. You still have time to cancel. It's okay. Just send us an email and think about this process. We're going to have them on Tuesday nights at the South Hills campus and Wednesday nights here. Just try it for a week or 2. If you don't like it, you can quit. You have that permission. So one other way that you can get connected is to serve. I'm going to tell you a quick story about Colby and Cheyenne. They started coming here because someone said, hey, you should go to church about a couple of years ago. And then for some reason, they were asked to greet because we needed some extra greeters. So they're outgoing, and they did it one time, and they actually thought, we love doing this. Can we do it more? So they signed up to help serve at Easter. And now They serve right between the children's building and the theater every Sunday morning at 9:30. You probably passed them on your way in. They live all the way across town, so they rearrange their schedule so on Saturday nights they can come over and spend the night with Colby's mom so that they can be here early on Sunday morning to greet. They're getting more connected now. They're seeing what's the next step, because serving is a great way. If maybe you're not ready to jump into some kind of a group, you say, let me just try it out with serving. I actually don't drink coffee. There's no coffee in here, but there are donut holes. I do eat donut holes. I'm going to eat these later on, but I don't know. Somebody has to come and make this stuff and set it out for you. We have a joke around our family. We call it the gate fairy, because when Steve takes out the trash or does yard work from the front to the backyard, he never remembers to shut the gate. I don't know what it is. It's just this mental block. So every time this happens, instead of me going in and being the nag, which is what I want to do, and say, I can't believe you didn't shut the gate again, because I need to remind him that he didn't do it just so he might learn. But I say, you know what? The gate fairy came again. The gate fairy came and shut the gate for him. The coffee fairy was here this morning, but they're not a fairy. There's all kinds of ways that you can serve. Now, we usually try to say, find your gifts and serve there, but sometimes you just see dirty feet, like Jesus, and you just step in. And right now is a time that we would love for you to step in. So there's Match Me cards in your bulletin. You can look and see there's just areas like children's and greeting and ushers. We always need ushers during service, not only here but Sunnyvale, because some of you are moving to Sunnyvale. There'll be some holes here, but some of you going to Sunnyvale, they need you. They're actually having their first training meeting of people that will be going to Sunnyvale today. You just write Sunnyvale across it, put your name. You're not signing up for anything. You're just getting more information about it. And you can put it in the basket later on. There's going to be people outside with tables, with Discover 640 Life and life groups. You can stop by on the way out if you need a little bit more information on those two, or you can also look and check our website. All I'm saying is there's power in being around others and allowing them to invest in you and you invest in them. And Jesus calls us to that. So just think, where am I and where do I want to be? And take some kind of step. Just a little one. Just take a step towards being more of what God wants you to be with others. Would you pray with me, please? Jesus, thank you for being the main power of the other for us. Giving us an example, showing us what it looks like, and then challenging us to step into that. So for each person here, we're all in different spaces. I pray that you would just guide us and direct us what it is that you want for us to take as just that small step. And then help us to take it. Give us the strength to do it. Help us to be reminded that we are better together. Amen.